What if your morning coffee became a luxury and your evening commute a thing of the past? Not because of a new lifestyle trend, but because the energy markets collapsed overnight. This isn't a far-fetched dystopia. It's the grim reality a global conflict could unleash. Let's dive into how World War III could trigger an energy crisis that reshapes the world as we know it. The chain reaction. Global trade in freefall. Imagine this. Conflict erupts, and within days, global trade grinds to a halt. Shipping lanes are blockaded, airspaces are closed, and sanctions choke the flow of goods. The interconnected supply chains we rely on for everything from food to medicine fall apart like a house of cards. Energy markets take the first hit. Without oil tankers and gas pipelines running smoothly, nations scramble to secure limited resources. Prices skyrocket, and the world's economies spiral into chaos. Suddenly, the question isn't how much gas costs, it's whether there's any gas at all. Oil prices. The crippling surge. Oil isn't just about fueling cars. It's the lifeblood of global industry. During a major conflict, oil prices wouldn't just rise, they'd explode. Consider this. When geopolitical tensions flare, even the mere threat of war sends prices soaring. Now imagine the real thing. Refineries in conflict zones shut down, production facilities are targeted, and exporting nations prioritize their own needs. For countries dependent on imports, the result is devastating. Inflation spirals, businesses collapse, and governments face mounting pressure to stabilize their crumbling economies. Energy markets in turmoil now. Let's talk about energy dependency. Europe, for instance, heavily relies on Russian gas. If pipelines are disrupted, entire nations could be plunged into darkness, literally and figuratively. Rolling blackouts and energy rationing become the new normal, crippling industries and leaving millions vulnerable. And it's not just Europe. The Middle East, Asia, and the Americas are all interconnected through a fragile web of energy trade. Disruption in one region sends shockwaves across the globe, affecting everything from electricity grids to heating systems. The domino effect. Inflation and scarcity. Rising energy costs don't stay in their lane. They drive up the price of everything: food, housing, transportation, and basic goods. Inflation spirals out of control, and what used to be affordable becomes unattainable for the average person. Think about it. Farmers need fuel for their machinery, manufacturers rely on electricity for production, and transportation systems depend on oil. When energy becomes scarce, the costs trickle down, hitting consumers the hardest. Suddenly, a loaf of bread or a carton of milk feels like a luxury. Sanctions. Economic warfare in a full-blown conflict. Economic sanctions become a weapon of choice. But sanctions don't just hurt the targeted nation, they have global repercussions. Restricting access to vital resources creates a ripple effect, disrupting industries and leaving vulnerable populations to bear the brunt. For nations under sanctions, the challenge becomes survival. finding alternative trade partners, tapping into domestic resources, or turning to the black market. But for the global economy, sanctions mean uncertainty, and uncertainty drives instability. Adapting to resource scarcity. So, how would nations cope? Some would hoard resources, prioritizing military and government needs over civilian consumption. Others might turn to renewable energy sources, but transitioning isn't an overnight fix. Communities might rely on rationing, localized farming, and decentralized energy systems. Innovations would emerge out of necessity, but they wouldn't erase the immediate pain of scarcity and the chaos of adaptation. The human toll beyond the economics, there's the human cost. Energy scarcity means hospitals without power, schools without heating, and cities without functioning transportation. It's a world where survival trumps comfort and innovation battles against time. World War III wouldn't just be fought with weapons. It would be fought in the energy markets, the grocery stores, and the wallets of ordinary people. The question isn't just whether we'd survive, it's what kind of world we'd be left with.